Many thanks to PPA for sponsoring this week's video. I've got a quick question for you. Have you ever been out and about, doing your thing, taking some photos, and said to yourself, this scene would be so much better with just a touch of fog rolling through? It's one of the most common things I say to myself while on location, as it seems like every scene can be improved with just a touch of atmosphere. And in this video, I'll show you a technique that you can use to easily add a bit of hyper-realistic atmosphere to your photos. This technique, it's not only extremely fun to play around with, but it adds just the right amount of subtle softening and misty quality to certain areas of your photos that really lends itself well to a pleasing and atmospheric image. And don't worry about taking notes or writing down the steps in order to do this at home. I created a free PDF guide that you can download, link in the description below. So to jump right into it, this is one of my all-time favorite fall photographs from West Virginia. I absolutely love every single thing about this photograph, but when I was on location, I was, super enamored by this, everything that was unfolding. I hit peak fall color. This location is always extremely busy. I was the only person there. Everything was lining up, but there was absolutely no atmosphere whatsoever. So I figured this would be a fantastic use case to do this on. So it's a very simple process. What I'm going to do is come up here. I'm already in the develop module. I'm going to come over here to the filters, and we're going to select linear gradient. I'm going to drag this linear gradient. I'm going to start from the very top, and I'm going to drag it down a little more than 3/4 of the way. It doesn't really have to be perfectly straight or anything like that. I actually normally will put it on a slight angle to about right there. Then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to come over here to the effects section, and I'm going to take my texture down to about -20. I'm going to take my clarity down to about -20. And then let me take the clarity down a little further. And then I'm going to take the haze to about -15. And as you look at the scene right now, it doesn't look like we really did much to it, but I'm going to zoom into the filter and kind of toggle it on and off because it's pretty important to be able to see exactly what's happening here. So I'm going to zoom into this area right here. Let me zoom in a little bit more right there. And then let's toggle this mask on and off. So this is before the mask, after the mask, before the mask, and after the mask. So there was a big change that was happening right there. So that is the first two steps. Apply the linear gradient, make the softening with the texture and the clarity, and then add a little bit of negative dehaze. Now the next thing we're gonna do, let me just close down the effects section, and I'm gonna open the color section. And what I'm gonna do here is just reduce the saturation just a touch to maybe around -20 right there. Because if you think about it, when there's color behind fog, that fog usually dilutes or makes the color a little bit more subdued. So I want to reduce the saturation in the area behind that mask just to create that hyper-realistic look. And this is a great way to do it. And these values, every photograph is going to be a little bit different, but in the free PDF guide that's in the description below, I will put the values that I'm using in this tutorial here just so you can kind of use those as a benchmark or a kind of a leading indicator or a jumping off point, if you will. So once the saturation is reduced just a touch, I'm going to come down here to the tone curve. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the black point, which is right here. And I'm going to lift this up to usually somewhere between 50 and 80. Let's just split the difference and go to about 65. And that output is what I'm looking at. As I lift this up and down, you can see that output is changing. That output is what I want to be somewhere between 50 and 80. And like I said, let's just leave it at 65 just to kind of split the difference. If I could get it to 65, there we go. And as I toggle this on and off, you can see now that really made a big difference. Now let's toggle the entire edit on and off. So this is before and after, before and after. And it's starting to look a little bit too much, but don't worry about it. It's gonna really completely change here in just a moment. Now what I wanna do, let me just close down the curve section. I'm gonna come up here to subtract. I'm gonna hit subtract, and I'm gonna open up the brush section. I'm gonna put the feather to 100, and I'm gonna put the flow to 50. And then I'm also going to take the density, and I'm also gonna put that to 50. And basically what I'm gonna do, since fog is not completely uniform, the fog in our photograph right now is completely uniform. It is even from the left side to the right side, and we don't want that. I don't want it to be completely uniform. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a bunch of just random brush strokes erasing the fog throughout the entire scene, just so it's not so even, so it's not so perfectly uniform. So as you can see, my paintbrush is right here in the bottom left-hand corner. I'm gonna make it a little bit larger, and I'm just gonna start to just kind of paint away. And you really can't see a difference because the flow is at 50 and the density is at 50. But what I like to do is just kind of take a brush stroke from the center and just move it out to the side. From the center, move it out and let go of my mouse. And I do this over and over again. And I know you really can't see what I'm doing at home physically, you can see it on the screen, but I'm just clicking here and I'm dragging away and I'm unclicking. Clicking the mouse here, dragging away and unclicking over and over again. And if you look up here at the mask, you can see that I'm starting to paint this away. You can see that it's not so white at the top anymore where that filter is. I'm just kind of painting this away, and I'm just kind of taking random brush strokes all over the scene. As you can see, there's really no rhyme or reason here. I'm just trying to make this filter not so uniform, I'll close this down, across the entire scene, just to make it a little bit more realistic. So I'm just gonna move this all over the place here. Now let's open this up and let's just look at our filter. And you can see up here, the little thumbnail, you can see how it's not completely uniform anymore. You can see where we painted this effect away. And one thing I failed to mention, you wanna make sure that auto mask is not selected at this point. So if it's checked, just uncheck it right there. But just kind of painting this effect away in certain areas like this right here. Now, once that is done, I'm gonna come back over here to the color section. And this isn't something that works on every single photo. I think it really works in this photo, but a lot of the times a fog is cooler. It looks cooler. So it's got more of a bluer or a cooler color tint. So I like to change that color balance of the mask as well too. So I'm gonna take this temperature and I'm gonna bring it down to somewhere between -20 and -40. You know, nothing crazy like that, but maybe let's do -25, something kind of in the middle to about right there. And as I toggle this on and off, you can really see what that did up at the top right there. Now the best part here is that you can have the preset slider, which gives you the ability to change the overall effect of this entire mask. And it's super, super powerful. So I'm gonna come up here to the preset slider and we can turn it all the way up. We can bring it all the way down. What I like to do is usually somewhere, I would say, I don't know, maybe like around 60-ish. It's kind of like the go-to area where I like to put this. So maybe about right there. And it doesn't look like we did much, but let me just close this down. Let me hit, bring this over here, close everything down. And if I toggle the entire mask on and off, that's before and after, before and after. So subtle. That's what I was saying, hyper realistic. It's not garish, it's not overboard. It looks very, very real. And it just adds a little bit of softening, a little bit of atmosphere to the scene. Here, I'll toggle it on and off again. Before the mask, or before the fog, after the fog, before the fog, and after the fog. And I think it really, really works well in this photograph as I toggle this on and off, on and off. So I've got another example here, more of a springtime photograph, which we'll do this in a slightly different manner using the radio filter. But before I get to that real quick, I do just want to say a big thanks to the sponsor of this week's video, which is Professional Photographers of America, or PPA for short. Now I know I've mentioned this on quite a few occasions over the years, but one of the top reasons why I'm a member of PPA is their straightforward approach to insuring camera gear. They offer up to $15,000 worth of coverage with a $50 deductible for repairs and a $350 deductible for full replacement of equipment loss. This gives me the peace of mind knowing my gear is protected not only from damage, but also theft or any other unforeseen event that may occur. And with a PPA membership, you'll also receive data loss negligence and malpractice protection with PPA's indemnification trust, along with professional development tools designed to help you grow your skills with mentorship programs and even portfolio reviews. So join a community of over 35,000 photographers and check out the link in the description below for a special discount on your PPA membership today. So this is a photograph from the Smoky Mountains from a couple springs ago, which I really, really like the way that this looks. And then, once again, this is another example of a scene that I really, really enjoyed. It's just a tiny little scene, a little nook, but using a kind of a longer focal length and zooming in a little bit, it really just kind of adds to the grandeur of this scene. But once again, no mist, no fog, no atmosphere. And this is kind of a perfect case, perfect use case where a photograph could be enhanced, if you will, with just a touch of atmosphere. So what we're gonna do this one with a radio filter. So first thing I'm gonna do is just make the photograph a little bit smaller on my screen. I'm gonna come up to the mask section and let's hit radio gradient. I'm gonna start at the top and I'm gonna drag it down to about a little more than 3/4 of the way into the scene. And then I'm going to make it wider. And I'm gonna make the edge of the frame, or I should say the edge of the filter, kind of line up with the photograph right here, as you can see on the right side and on the left side. And then just kind of bring this down to about 3/4 of the way. Now I'm going to come over here to the effects section, and we're going to soften things a little bit, bring the texture to -20, clarity to -20, dehaze to about negative maybe 15-ish. I think that looks pretty good right there. Let's toggle this on and off just to see what we did. Let's zoom in to make it a little bit easier to see at home. So this is before and after, before and after. So once again, very, very subtle shift right there. I'm going to close down the effects section, and I'm going to come over here to the color section. I want to reduce that saturation, nothing crazy, nothing to like that right there, but about -20 seems to look pretty good. And let's see, I'm going to leave the feather. I didn't mention this a minute ago, but I'm going to leave the feather of the radial filter at about 75. Sometimes I might even take it down to 60. I don't want it to be too soft of a transition. I want it to make sure that it is covering the entire photograph. So I'm actually going to bring it down just a little bit to a point right there. I think looks pretty good. Then I'm going to come over here to the tone curve. We're going to grab that black point right here, and we're going to drag it up to 65, which is kind of that halfway point. Toggle it on and off. And I know it's starting to look a little bit crazy, but rest assured it will not look like that in a few moments. I'm going to close this down right here. I'm going to zoom out on my photograph a little bit more. I'm going to pull this out a little bit wider here to about right there. I think is looking a little bit better. And then let's hit fit. And now we're going to come back to our mask, and I'm going to hit subtract, and I'm going to come over here to brush, and I'm going to start and make sure that I got the flow at 50, the density at 50, the feather at 100, and the auto mask is unchecked. And like I mentioned a few moments ago, don't worry about trying to write all this stuff down. I know there's a lot of steps and a lot of different details here. I'll put it all in that PDF guide that you can download to reference at home. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start taking these brush strokes from the center of the photograph out towards every edge of the scene. Back and forth, tons of just random brush strokes all over the place, just to make the overall effect not so uniform. I don't want it to be even across the entire photograph. I really just want it to be random. And I think random is a good word to use here, because there really is no rhyme or reason to this point right here. As you can see, when I look at the thumbnail up here, it's just kind of just all over the place. The goal is to just make sure that the effect isn't perfectly uniform across the entire photograph. So just completely random erasing brushstrokes all over the scene. I think looks pretty good. I think that looks nice right there. And I'm going to come over here to color, and I'm going to cool this down a little bit. Nothing crazy like that, but just maybe about 20, I think looks pretty good right there. And now we're going to come over here to the preset slider and just kind of bring this down. And you can bring it down a lot. You can also, bring it up a little bit as well. So, but I usually find that using the adjustments that I've been using over the last two photographs, I find that when I use those values in that very specific way, I can usually take that preset slider and take it from 100, which is the default, and bring it down to around 60-ish or maybe 70-ish, and that creates a very realistic effect. Now, of course, if you use completely different values than I use, that's going to determine or change how much of that preset slider that you want to apply. But if you kind of just follow along with what the recommended settings that I was using on these two examples, usually taking this preset to around 60-ish is a pretty good starting point, to about right there. And then let's toggle this entire edit on and off just so you can see the difference. So this is before and after, before and after. And what's so funny about this is as you're editing the photo, you really don't even see what you're doing. It just kind of just blends in it to everything. But once you start to toggle that on and off effect back and forth, you really see how powerful of a change this really is. So once again, this is where it started, which I really like the way that this started to begin with, but it just didn't have that little bit of oomph that I think a little bit of atmosphere adds to those photographs. So this is before and after. And I think actually now that I'm looking at it, I think it might be a little bit too much. So I'm just gonna come over here to the mask right here. As you can see, this is it right here. And I'm just gonna take this slider and I'm gonna bring it down a little bit more. And that is really the beauty of that preset slider, or that opacity slider, if you will, is because you don't have to go in and make changes to every single setting. You can just change the overall strength of that mask, which is huge. It's one of my favorite additions to Lightroom over the last year. So I'm gonna bring that down a little bit more. Now let's close it down and toggle that mask on and off. So that's before and after, before and after. And as you can see, this is a ton of fun to play with. I guarantee you have got photographs out there that you absolutely love the way that they look, but you probably wish there was a little bit of atmosphere rolling through the background of that scene. So I would highly encourage you, if you have a little bit of time one day, just to test this out on your own, apply it to some of your photographs and see if it's a look that you might want to apply to some of your images moving forward. So I hope you did enjoy this week's video. If you have any questions about how to use this kind of hyper-realistic, foggy, misty, atmospheric look to your photographs, please leave those comments or questions in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get back in touch with you as soon as humanly possible. And be sure to check out the link in the description below for the PPA membership as well. Also, PDF guide is going to be down there in the description as well, just kind of outlining all the steps that I went through for these two photographs. As always, I really do appreciate you carving out a little bit of time to spend it with me here today. And if you did enjoy this week's video, if you could, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and I will see you all next Wednesday. Bye.